My name is Wesley. I'm graduating next year. My majors are in computer science and math. And I guess something interesting or something I like to do for fun is like exercise and snowboarding.
I'm June Lindroth. I'm a rising senior, so graduating next year. I'm a civil engineering major. Um, some things I like to do, I love like walking and any like live music. I'm always going to concerts.
Cool.
And I'm Logan Martin. I think I'm a junior. I'm not sure. It's a weird transfer situation. I'm a business major, and I just generally love all things history. So I'm taking this class extra.
Okay. That's cool. I guess like I could start us off with the three questions. So yeah. So there are. Oh, actually, we have to say our thesis, right?
Yeah, we have to read our 250 words, all three of us.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll go first. For most of the 1800s, America has always been at the frontier in terms of pushing our land to the west and um, the settlers treating it as like open and free. But in the 1900s, the consensus was announced that the frontier line was gone or like no longer existed, and the country had filled into the coast. In 1893, a Frederick Turner stood at a conference in Chicago and argued that the frontier had been a side story, but the whole engine had not been a side story, but pretty much all of America's history, and constantly trying to like push for free land. He said that what that is what made Americans individualistic, democratic, restless, and different from Europeans. And then he said something that the frontier was gone. So, what force will shape the nation next that had been switched off? And in 1899, Theodore Roosevelt gave a speech in the same city with his own answer. And he says that since the frontier was used up, the new place was um, the wider borders, like wider land. And the recent war with Spain had just landed in America. And he argued that the country had a duty to take up these like different countries essentially. Um, I think some interesting parts from Turner's paper or excerpt is that his like main thesis is saying that the existence of an area of free land is kind of just like what America was like all about and how America developed. Do you guys have like something to add on?
Well, yeah, I can read my 250 words as well.
Okay.
Um, so I wrote the two readings from this week, The Strenuous Life and the Significance of the Frontier in American History, highlight the idea that the greatness of our nation has come from struggle and continual expansion, and the nation must continue to do so. Roosevelt says to preach that highest form of success, which comes not to the man who desires mere peace, but to the man who does not shrink from danger, from hardship, or from bitter toil, and who out of these wins the splendid ultimate triumph. I thought this was interesting because the country has gotten through the Revolutionary War, rebuilding the nation, and now the westward expansion. And there are many unknowns for American citizens, but this quote serves almost as a motivation for individuals like going forward. Um, and then in Turner's excerpt, he highlights the end of an era for Americans, the frontier shifting forward, or it's essentially gone. There's no control on the frontier anymore. He said, for a moment at the frontier, the bonds of customs are broken and unrestrained is triumphant. Basically, to me, like this is saying like there's excitement for what is to come in the United States. Like the men before them, freedom and independence is very sought after. And I believe both passages serve as a motivation to the people of America. Struggle, expansion, and excitement are necessary for the future of the nation. And the last thing to close it off that I think was like really significant is Turner said, America has been another name for opportunity, which I thought sums it up perfectly, both of the passages.
And I can go ahead and read mine too now. So, Frederick Jackson Turner's frontier thesis can be defined as the American core values of independence, adaptability, and democratic attitudes. Turner believes that the frontier is not necessarily just a place on the map, but it's a process. This can be clearly seen when he states, behind institutions, behind constitutional forms and modifications, lie the vital forces that call these organs into life and shape them into meeting changing conditions. The peculiarity of American institutions is that the fact that they have been compelled to adapt themselves to be the changes of an expanding people. Turner felt that the American drive for expansion puts them in a position where people shape the government and reinforcing our belief in self governance. And then Theodore Roosevelt references his strenuous life belief um, as a drive to make individuals grow through discomfort. Roosevelt believed that discomfort and struggle causes individuals to grow. On a larger scale, Roosevelt believes that, in a similar vein, inaction by government is worse than improper action. He states this directly when he says that if we undertake the solution, there is, of course, always the danger that we might not solve it aright, but to refuse to undertake the solution simply renders it certain that we cannot possibly solve it right. In essence, prosperity does not come from idleness, but rather from hard work and strain. And then, in the closing frontier, America had lost something that had challenged it for decades. Roosevelt had used Turner's frontier thesis as a guide in stating that with the closing of the frontier, America was in need of new challenges. Roosevelt argued that expansion through the newly claimed Spanish lands and colonies provided the challenge the nation needed to not be surpassed on the global stage. By providing an outlet for military strength, increased involvement in foreign affairs, and in territorial expansion, Roosevelt viewed the administration of these former Spanish territories as an opportunity for Americans to embrace the strain and challenge necessary for national prosperity. As Roosevelt states, a life of slothful ease, a life of peace which springs merely from lack of either desire or power to strive after great things, it is as little worthy of a nation as an individual. Roosevelt believed that if America remained idle after the closing of the frontier, it would lose the strength and ambition that had defined its rise. By continuing to pursue expansion and international involvement, the nation could preserve the spirit of struggle and growth that Turner believed had shaped the American character.
Yep.
Good, yeah. So, what are the questions? Sorry, I don't have them pulled up.
Oh yeah, the three questions. The first one is, how would you define what scholars have long referred to as Turner's frontier thesis? What specific evidence from his text supports that definition, and why?
Like defining like the whole speech or the frontier itself?
The frontier thesis itself.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that to put it all in all together, it's his thesis is that American character and democracy are like not products of sorry. I need to think about this a little bit more.
Yeah, I need to think too.
It's like I had said, to me, his idea of the frontier thesis is saying that the frontier is more than just a dot on a map. It's saying that the frontier is a process of expanding and populating areas that don't have government to prop themselves up. It's democratic experimentation, in essence, in my mind, showing that as Americans expand territorial wise, we're finding our national identity in these uninhabited territories.
Mm-hmm. I also think like when he says the frontier is gone, it's like there's no like line, I guess, of the nation. There's no control anymore. So I think that it also like I think it defines like a lot of unknowns, like that the frontier is gone. People are moving west, but there's no, I guess, right way to move out west or defined way. And that's why the frontier is like essentially gone, is because there's no like, I guess, line
Mhm.
on the map.
I see. When Turner says that like this is like what differentiates us from Europeans, wouldn't you like kind of argue like it's kind of similar because Europeans are like technically expanding the frontier of their own like borders essentially, right? And like conquering more land. Wouldn't that just be like kind of the same as like Americans are kind of copying Europeans?
I almost think that they think of Europeans as like total control and like there's no freedom to it. So I think that's where there's a differentiation, but
It's similar but also dissimilar because
Mm-hmm.
while it's, there's expansion happening across Europe too, everywhere they expand, there's already people that are viewed as civilized. Um, as we expand west through our unsettled territory, we're encountering either nobody or native groups who they view as not even second class citizens.
Mm,
So it not only is it shaping American ideals as we move west, we are, how does he put it, helping. There's I can't remember how he says it in the lectures, but it's just bringing up in our mind, bringing up the native population to civilization in their
I
minds.
see. So like he kind of just he kind of just condenses the free lands as like the wilderness, but also Native Americans themselves. Like they condense them into like one as wilderness, right?
yeah, I think so.
Mm.
Let's see. The next question was, what does Roosevelt mean by the strenuous life in both terms of the individual and the nation? What specific evidence from the text supports this definition and why?
There's a quote that I wrote down. Let me see. Um, so he says, "We admire the man who embodies victorious effort, the man who never wrongs his neighbor, who is prompt to help a friend, but who has those viral qualities necessary to win in the stern strife of actual life." And then he later says, "As it is with the individual, so it is with the nation." Um, so basically, all of these qualities, I think each individual needs to have so the nation can have them as well. Like, there's not one without.
Mm, I see. My understanding of his whole idea of a strenuous life is that um, the idea of comfort and ease
Mhm.
is like mainly for cowards, I think he says,
Yeah.
and life is like one that was like made through struggle, like a direct comparison, right?
Mhm.
And he doesn't just scale this up; he scales this up from a person to like a country. Like we all have to embody this attitude of you know struggle and effort.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
says something also. Sorry to interrupt. You can keep
Oh
going.
no, no, it's okay, it's okay.
I was just gonna say, he says something. I don't have the direct quote, but it was like, if you are like rich and wealthy, um, you teach your son to not just like sit idle by and comfort. Like you teach them to keep working and, um, I guess, try to become not. I guess
Mhm.
I don't remember exactly what he says, but like again, like you said, don't get comfortable.
Yeah,
Um,
he uses like a direct example of China back in the 1800s of like being a really like lazy country, and they like eventually China got into a lot of wars because they were so contempt and like they had a lot of land that got conquered by like Japan, I think, right?
Yeah, I didn't know much about that, but I do remember he compared to China. It's like we don't want to be like them.
I think it's an interesting comparison he makes because while it's true that at the time China was sort of falling to pieces, it wasn't necessarily because they were standing idly by. At the time, they had an isolationist view of the world, which is what was happening in the United States at the time. Except the difference was that China had large swaths of territory taken by Russia, Japan, and Great Britain. And I think the comparison is interesting here because, in a way, Roosevelt is sort of pushing against isolationist policies. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he's calling for us to go to these territories that we have taken from Spain. Um, and if you, at the top of the text, it was talking about how Congress was debating about whether we were going to just annex the Philippines entirely or if we were going to leave them independent, which we ended up leaving them independent. But to me, the strenuous life is sort of his way of saying go forth and work. Um, nothing grows in a comfort zone sort of thing where he thinks that we've developed as a nation by being uncomfortable and by working hard. And in essence, he's saying that we have to take on these big tasks if we want to continue to grow and not be surpassed on the global stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it all like I think I quoted also. I thought it was. I think this kind of goes along with like what you were saying. He says, um, like far better it is to dare mighty things to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to take rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much because they live in the gray twilight that knows not victory nor defeat. So it's like might as well try and
Mm-hmm.
either
Yeah.
fail and try again than just sit around and become.
Do you think mm, do you think it's a bit contradictory how like Roosevelt was saying that we need to be we need to expand our borders, like taking the original frontier thesis, but then he's also saying that like China avoided conflict, right? But then like trying to expand our borders is directly getting into conflicts and trying to like take over other nations. Does he like say this like with good intentions and like play a better part in the world, or is he trying to like say something else here?
Well,
I think
oh,
I think
sorry.
it's a selfish point of view. Like I think he's not trying to say this. Like I don't necessarily think that he's wants to be violent, I guess, but I don't think that it's like
Well, that
I
sort
think
of. Oh, sorry.
no, you go ahead.
That whole topic of conversation sort of segues into the third question, which is how did his speech turn Turner's frontier thesis into a roadmap for America foreign and domestic policy, and then just ask for evidence. But I think that whole conversation sort of blends with that in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, how that all goes together in my mind, that's sort of the early groundwork to the idea of American exceptionalism, where we believe that, of course, it's common belief that we're number one, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that's an early thought that leads into that, where we think that it's our role to go forward and bring civilization to these previously Spanish territories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I do. Like I think that the strenuous life is like taking Turner's thesis into maybe not violent territory, but I think like you said, yeah, like the like we are number one kind of mindset. Act like it, like let's expand and do what we can for our nation.
Mm, I agree with like trying to expand outwards and turning like the local frontier into a global one. But I just find it like kind of contradicting that he says that, to quote, if we were to be really great people, we must strive in good faith to play a great part in the world, in the sense that you like conquer other nations, make them more civilized, right? But by being great people, he also describes bringing the barbarism abroad, right? So like it's kind of like a two, it's kind of like you can't have one without the other, I guess. Like
Mhm.
you have to conquer the land and you have to be like barbaric about conquering the land, because like no one's gonna, you know, willingly give up the land, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
I do think it is contradictory. Um, I think I need to pull up.
What are your thoughts, Logan?
Well, in his speech, he states directly that a life of slothful ease, a life of peace which springs merely from lack of either desire or power to strive after great things, is little worthy of a nation or of as an as a individual. So, in my mind, what that says is, in his mind, if we're not expanding, we're not doing anything,
Mm-hmm.
and he equates not doing anything to a he thinks that's the worst thing you can do. It's like he said earlier in